So here's our program. Enter score 1 for Fred, 10, 20, 10, 9, 0, 30, whatever. And then it displays the list in an ugly format, and it says the average is 12.4, which I'm just going to assume is correct. Looks reasonable, since I entered some zeros, and I don't know, I guess I could run it again and enter all the same number just to make sure that the average is that number. I'll do that. 1, 1. What do you know? I blew it up. Try it again. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. The average is 10. Okay, it works. So here's what we've done. We've written a program, this is for the benefit of the video, that asks the user for a specified series of scores, and it calculates and prints the average score. So we wrote a function called getScores that looks like that. Please feel free to pause the video at this point to type it in. And then we wrote a getAverage, which is really simple. All it did is take the sum of the list and divide it by the length of the list and return that. And then we call those two functions. L is equal to getScores Fred, 10. Average is equal to getAverage L. Print the averages. What are these things called? These values that you put inside the parentheses. Well, I kind of called them parameters here. They are parameters when you're defining the function. They're called arguments when you're passing them in. Kind of a subtle distinction. I'm never going to count you wrong if you use the other one. But L is a parameter that gets filled in with the list. So we pass a list in there. Name and num are parameters, so they get filled in by this argument. Name becomes Fred, and the number becomes 10. So you define a function with the def keyword. If it's got any parameters, you put them inside the parentheses separated by commas. If it needs to return something, you use the return keyword. All right, there's not much we need to do with this. So let's go ahead and flowchart it. If you can't remember your email address, I can look it up. If you can't remember your password, I could reset it, but I hope everybody does for the sake of time. Alright, as usual, the question becomes, how can I get all of this on one screen? I'm going to paste it into a program called WordPad where I can make the text really small and try to dock that over on the side. Alrighty, you can write your functions first, or you can write your main code. Your main code is the first unindented code that's not under a DEF. I'm going to go ahead and do the unindented code. If you wanted to, when you were writing code, you could put a comment like down there that said #main in front of getScores, stuff like that. I'm going to put that there just as kind of a visual indicator. All right, what do you start your code off with? A start. What's the first thing after our start? Well, we're doing getScores, print L, then we're doing average is equal, and then we're doing another print. So we're making a function call right off the bat. Which of these blocks is a function call? Yep, the barred rectangle. So L is equal to get scores Fred, comma, 10. And yeah, that's looking ugly, so I'm going to try to break it up by hitting Control Enter. I think we decided that you could just hit Enter nowadays. Didn't used to work that way. Nope. Got to be Control Enter. Alright, we did that. Now we're going to print the list. Prints are done in tilted rectangles, so-called data blocks. Print the list. We could call it output if we wanted to make it sound like pseudocode. Then we need to call the getAverage function. So that's in another rectangle with vertical bars. Average is equal to getAverage, pass L into it. Now we're going to print the average. So one more trapezoid. Print average for comma name comma is comma AVG. That's looking tacky, so I'm going to make it a wider box. Alright, then we're done, so we can put a stop at the bottom. If you compare that back to our code, it's a one-to-one correspondence in this case between the code. If I give you code like that and I want you to draw a flowchart, it's okay to make a one-to-one correspondence, but if you get to the point where you're asking for input and then you're converting it, to a float or an int, I don't care if you just do input score rather than print please enter a score and x is equal to input and then x is equal to float x. You can just put input x like we've been doing in the past. But I'm not going to count you off if you do all three of them. Alright, I should draw a line between each and every one, but since this is an exam and I'm hurrying, I'm going to draw a line from the start terminator to the stop. But I'm going to right click on that line if I can get it to select. Remember, you can zoom in and out with the control key. And then do send to back. There. Now that's pretty. So what circle, excuse me, I just gave it away. What shape do you use to define a function? The circle, the oval. How'd you guess? Alrighty. We may as well do them in the order that they were written up here. Get scores and get average. So DEF, get scores, and it takes two parameters. It takes a name and it takes a num. Alright, the first thing that it does, it makes an empty list. It sets a counter to 1. See, if we were using a for loop, we could get rid of that x is equal to 1. We could get rid of that x plus equals 1 and then just have one line of code here. But we didn't. So we've got to make our empty list and we've got to set our counters. I think here I am going to wind up drawing all the lines rather than just one. Now wait until the while loop to do that. Okay. Next we have to set x to 1. Or we could just do x is equal to 1. We've been kind of forgetting the set keywords. Remember that set is not actual Python code. If I use it, it's in a pseudocode context. Alrighty, now while. While are also done in diamonds. While x is less than or equal to num. Now that'd be a good point to draw the line and send it to the back. Draw the line, right click on it, send it back. Shouldn't there be arrowheads on every single line? Yeah, there should, but this is clear enough, huh? Print it out and draw them. No, I'm kidding. Alright, is everybody caught up to this point, or do I need to leave something on the screen longer? Yeah, this is our in-class. Well, we're going to upload the PY and this. Personally, I like color coding my functions, so I'm going to color code that circle with the paint bucket. I'm going to make it pale blue, and I'm going to make the call to it pale blue. Do you have to do that? No, not at all. But when I look at the code, it will be instantly obvious, you know, where that code is.
How did you do that again? Can you show me?
I selected the shape.
Okay.
I came to the paint bucket
Oh, gotcha.
and clicked on the paint bucket. All right, we have a while loop. Since the code isn't in it, I'm going to shoot off to the right. One instructor here always shows going off to the left for the true condition. He's free to do that. I'm free to do it this way. I like going off to the right because it means that the code indentation started there. All right, so print, enter score for what? And then score is equal to input, and then score is equal to float score. Like I said, I could just make one thing that said input score and just assume that you know how to do the rest, or I could do all three of them. Yeah, we're going to do all three. Print, enter score, comma x, because we want it to say comma 1, score 2, score 3. Quote, for, comma, name. I'm going to assume you don't have the pseudocode in front, the code in front of you, or I could ask you, what's the next line? The next line is score is equal to input. So, we need another one of those guys. You could say score is equal to input, make it perfect Python, or you could just say input score. Either's fine. And lastly, we need to convert score to float. We could write convert score to float, or we could write score is equal to float score. One tells you how to program it. Convert score to float. You're right, that's the wrong shape. Thank you very much. Since it's math, what kind of block does it go in?
That one.
Rectangle, so I'm just going to right click on it, choose change shape. There we go. And now we need to append that to the score. So I could write the exact code, l.append parentheses score, or I could try to come up with some pseudocode-ish permutation. Append score to L. I try to veer away a little bit from using exact Python syntax, because you could give this flowchart to another programmer and they'd be able to code it. But the more Python specific code in it, the more annoyed they're going to get, because the syntax, you know, is too specific. Any programmer in any one of these languages would know how to do this stuff if you didn't say, if you weren't too specific. And if you are too specific, they could figure it out, but okay. Then we need to increment x, because that's the last thing we do in our loop. If it's a while loop and not a for loop. That's more math, so it goes in another rectangle. Why can't I find my rectangles? There they are. X plus equals 1, or we could put the text increment x. I think that's clear enough. A C or a Java programmer would, make it say x++ rather than x plus equals 1. And then you'd wonder why that didn't work in your Python code. So saying increment x would have been truer to the spirit of making it generic. All right.
Do you have a spot for this in the class?
You need a Dropbox?
Yes.
All righty. All right, we are really almost done with our flowchart, because the other function is just like 2 lines long. 1 if you don't count the return statement. So here's our flowchart. Once we're done with the while loop, the next statement, and it's unindented, so it's not part of the loop, it's underneath it, is return L. So we'll do that. Just go down to a circle. Returns are also done in ovals. Return L. All right, the last function. It's 3 lines long if you include the DEF and the return. So it's going to be fast. And it's okay if you turn yours in incomplete. I think I will upload this flowchart as a document in the notes section. Anyways, DEF, get average. How many parameters did our get average function take? If you recall. If you have to go look at it, I can look at it as easy as you. But it took 1 parameter, which is the list that it's going to average. And then it did 1 bit of math. Average is equal to the sum of the list divided by the length of the list. And a programmer in a different language might have to rename the functions that did that, but they could do so. Then we return. Return average. Alright, I'm going to color code those guys too, make them yellow with the paint bucket. And it's a done flowchart. Alright, that's it. Do a download as, and you can get the PDF. Since we have a wee bit of time left, why don't we go ahead and play with the insert command as soon as you get this downloaded. I'm just going to stick it up here at the very top of the code. You know, it has nothing to do with the scores, but I mean, I guess we can make a new one. All right, file new, save as, insert. Let's make an empty list. Let's append some items to it. L.append 100, L.append 200, L.append 300. And then let's print L, not with a fancy loop. Now let's do the same thing. Let's make another list, M, and let's insert the items. M.insert at position 0, 100. M.insert at position 0, 200. M.insert at position 0, 300. Print L. Go ahead and run it and then tell me what the difference is between what the two things do. Yeah, it would be. Otherwise, it's going to print the same thing. Thank you. There we go. Make sure that's an M, not an L.
What do you want this one called?
I call it insert.py. Just because. If you can't figure out a name for it, just call it date. Anybody getting syntax errors? They want nuked. Otherwise, as soon as you get the script uploaded, then we're done for the day. Script in the PDF. Alright guys, so everything will be graded as of Thursday. And then if you're curious as to your grade, hang out Thursday and I will grade your exam, give you a preliminary grade on it. So that you can find out, you know, if you're passing a course or whatever criteria is for staying in it. Hope nobody's considering dropping it though. What? Our exam is going to be less, our final is going to be, I think, less than a month from this exam. What I'm going to do is make it optional. You can take it if you want to increase your averages. If not, what you can do is you can take the average of your first and your second exam as your final exam score as well. So.
That's nice of you. That's super.
And remember that if you're enrolling in a summer or fall course, I'm going to want some email about it. I'll ask you to send me email about it again because I'm going to want you to put the subject of the email in a specific format, which is the name of the class and your name, so it's easy for me to remember where. Okay, guys, we're done.
Can you put the flowchart back on the screen?
Pardon me?
Can you put the flowchart back
Oh, yeah, sure. Do you need a printout?
No.
Okay. Or I can zoom in on it if it's